Mr. Hockey, a legend on the ice.
With over 800 goals and over 1,800 points, this former member of the production line in Detroit was smooth and quick, but also rough and tough.
An icon in Detroit. A true fighter who took on some of the toughest in the game. A fan favorite who inspired young and old. A man who even in his final years showed us yet again what it really means to be a champion. Tonight, we celebrate the life of Gordie Howe. Welcome to this special edition of Sports Final Edition. We're dedicating the whole show to honoring Mr. Hockey, number 9, who passed away Friday morning. Tonight, we'll bring Mickey Redmond in to tell us stories about the way Howe played. We'll talk to Jeff Blashill from the Red Wings about what he means to the organization. But first, here's Bernie Smilovitz on the life of Mr. Hockey.
There are few athletes that carry the weight of a sport and a city with them like Gordie Howe. He was hockey. It's that simple. Why else the nickname Mr. Hockey? And his love of hockey was unquestioned. He played until he was 52, which says something about durability, longevity, and the love of the sport.
800 goals, which really doesn't mean that much because 786 is the record. And the other would be to just eat the fruits of the well wishes of the fans. Just sit back and cherish every moment you had and then try to get a little more.
From the Detroit Red Wings, number 9, Gordie Howe.
Every time Gordie Howe's name is mentioned, the response from anyone listening is one of awe. He was a pillar of a man with strength that was legendary. Never mess with Gordie Howe in the corners. You might come out with a couple of teeth missing. But he always played the game cleanly, and he helped build a sport into what it is today.
It's a major loss for not only the Detroit Red Wings, but the whole hockey world.
He treated everybody on an equal footing.
Howe's real strength off the ice was his wife, Colleen. They were side by side until she was taken from him several years ago. They were quite a duo, helping to finish each other's thoughts and sentences and always supportive of the other. Like the time we had them on live and Colleen stole the show.
Ask him, does he still keep those elbows up when he goes in the corner?
Only in bed.
Oh, shoot.
I'd like to have the answer.
Oh, man.
NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman said on Friday that Gordie Howe is the reason the league is so strong today. Wayne Gretzky was every modern-day player's idol. Gretzky's idol? You guessed it, Gordie Howe.
I can't say enough about, he was the greatest player that ever played, and from our point of view, we're lucky enough in the hockey world that he happened to be the nicest superstar that maybe ever lived, and that made him pretty unique.
The passing of an icon brings many emotions to many people. There's sadness, but then you realize you had the man for 88 years, and this man made every day count. So your sadness will turn to celebration. Celebrate this man, because that's what Gordie Howe would have wanted. And if you know what's good for you, and you want to keep all of your teeth, celebrate. Celebrate Gordie Howe.
And we are celebrating Gordie Howe by talking about him. Mickey Redmond joins me now live. Mickey, thanks for being here.
It's good to be here, and it is good to celebrate what Gordie brought to the game and he brought to the world for entertaining people off the ice and putting smiles on children's faces. I've seen it a million times.
Now, Gordie came into the league in '47. You came in '67, so you were a young whippersnapper when you were coming into the league, but you said he was your favorite?
He was my favorite growing up in Peterborough when I played for the Peterborough Petes in the OHL. And we either got usually Toronto on Wednesday night, Montreal on Saturday, or vice versa. And of course, there was only 6 teams in the league, so you saw a lot of the American teams. But Gordie Howe, Rocket Richard, both wearing number 9, they were favorites of mine. But Detroit, of course, seemed like across the world from Peterborough in those days when you didn't move around very much. It's 330 miles door to door now, and we do it a lot. But yeah, it was great to watch Gordie, the way he played the game, the way he produced, got it all done so much better than most everybody else on a consistent basis over 20 years. The accolades on the ice for Gordie speak for themselves, but as you'll see for most people, it was the off-ice stuff to go with that just completed this man as a complete individual. It was absolutely adorable.
That's why he was called Mr. Hockey. There's only one of them. It was a different league back then. It was more physical, and he still scored all those goals.
Yeah, it was a different game for sure. It was rough and tumble, and I've often said Gordie could beat you in the alley. If you had to go behind the barn, he was going to kick the tar right out of you. But he had to play the game. He fought his own battles. He had nobody on his side fighting for him. He just had a passion to play and to compete like very, very few have ever had it. And boy, look at the elbows. I mean, he was well known for the elbows, and he almost got me one time. I was 19 years old. Came into Olympia with the Montreal Canadiens, and right in front of the bench, he didn't catch me, but boy, I felt the wind in my chin, and I thought, oh boy, there's those patented elbows from Mr. Hockey. And but he just, welcome to the league, kid. I said, oh, I'll stay away from you, Mr. Howe.
So many people telling great stories like that. We'll have Mickey all night long. Coming up, we're going to bring in Red Wings coach Jeff Blashill. He joins the discussion about his impact on the Red Wings organization. That's next. Welcome back to the special edition of Sports Final Edition, Remembering Mr. Hockey. I'm joined now by the coach of the Red Wings, Jeff Blashill. Thanks for joining both Mickey and I.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so you're a hockey player. You were born in Detroit, moved to the Sioux, but you knew of Gordie Howe.
Oh yeah, Gordie Howe's presence growing up was huge. Didn't get a chance to see him really play. I was too young at that point for that, but certainly I knew of him, knew all about what his impact was on the NHL and in the Detroit and the Red Wings organization.
You've been here 5 years with Detroit, Grand Rapids for 3, here first of all and back as a head coach. How much does it mean to you to have your players today understand where this whole thing came from, i.e. Howe and the gang way back when, and being an original 6 team, for them to understand what paved the way for where they are today?
I think it's extremely important. I talked to our players at the beginning of the season about every organization has history, but few have the history of success that the Red Wing organization has. And I would say obviously Mr. Howe had the biggest impact probably of all the great players to be responsible for a lot of that success. And so that's something that I try to pass on. I get a chance before every game to look up in the rafters as we're getting ready for the national anthem and see the numbers that are retired. And as you know, Mick, it's hard to get your number retired in Detroit where we don't do it easily. And I look up there and see those, and Gordie's the best of the best, and I know that because the players will tell me that.
So when he came around, and he was around here a lot, you know, after the Ilitches bought the team in right around 1980, what did you see that your players, the reaction of your players to Gordie, even at age 60, 70, and 80, even a few months ago?
Yeah, just even as age started to get the best of him, his impact and presence was still amazing. As he walked in the room and everybody around really was still in awe. I think we were in awe of what his impact was, who he was. Our players absolutely know, even our young guys that would have never had any inkling of him as a player, weren't born at the time. It's still something that is pretty treasured.
And the European guys, they weren't unfamiliar with who Gordie Howe was and what he represented.
No, for sure. I think anybody that's followed hockey, or once you play in the NHL, you get a real lesson in a hurry about its great history, and Gordie certainly has a great history and a big impact.
Yeah, and if you didn't know who Gordie Howe was, he'd tell you who he was, right? That was his, you know, he was a real tough guy, but he scored 1 million goals as well. Is there a guy like that in the NHL right now? You're behind the bench. Do you see anyone on the ice like that?
It's interesting. I thought of that on the way down, and the one player that came to mind in the NHL today is Jamie Benn. Jamie's, he's tough, he's strong, he's skilled. He's what every team in the NHL wants. Mark Howe made a comment to me via text, we'll try to get you a Gordie-type player for next season. It's what we're all coveting. There's so few, and Gordie was the best at what he did.
He sure was. Mickey, Jamie Benn for you too?
Yeah, in today's game, Jamie Benn, if Jamie Benn plays half the time that Gordie, I mean, the game's a different game today, but, and there's not a lot of fighting where Gordie could beat you in the alley, he could beat you on the ice, he could beat you anywhere. Jamie Benn plays with a real edge. He's a high-end player. He cares more than most guys that play this game, and he's not going to come in second, and that's the way Gordie was.
What now? So Gordie Howe is gone, of course, visitation funeral this week. What's next, do you think, for the Red Wings in remembering him?
Well, when I think about Gordie, all the stuff that we talk about on the ice was, everybody knows about that. But what I know about Gordie, having met him, played with him a half a year here, Jeff, in 1970-71 when I got traded here, and watching him off the ice, especially with kids. I mean, there's nothing like it. He always had, as you know, he had the elbows going even off the ice, you know, and he always had a joke to give it. He had a story to tell you. He was just a real gentleman. He was a gentle giant that played the game like nobody ever will.
Yeah, and I'd say the impact of, I've heard this word so many times over the last couple of days, how humble he was. And I think that impact's been passed down from generation to generation. A lot of people will talk about hockey players within pro athletes and what a great type of people they are. And that humble approach that he brought, I think, has continued to be passed down.
Well, his legacy will remain with the Detroit Red Wings. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
appreciate it. Mickey will stick with us. Gordie Howe, also known for his quotes and the funny things he would say. Here's one more. Welcome back to the special edition of SFE honoring Mr. Hockey. Mickey Redmond still here telling me stories. The stories of number 9 seem to be endless, and we're going to ask you a few more of those in just a bit. But, you know, we talked to the Red Wings this week and asked them what they thought of Gordie Howe.
He was incredibly kind, loved to make people laugh, loved to tell stories, loved to interact with the fans, loved to interact with people in the game. So just an incredible ambassador for our sport, for our team, for the National Hockey League.
During the Winter Festival at Comerica Park, I'm on the ice and I'm on the one side. My son's in the middle between Gordie and I, and Gordie comes up and gives Keenan the flying elbow, and we actually got a picture of that. And you know, that's something that you know, we have blown up and framed, and something that certainly we're never going to forget.
One time I was going through the locker room and I tripped over something, and I turned around and there's Gordie with his foot out laughing at me, and it's just stuff like that. He's always joking around and had a smile on his face, so to meet him and be on a personal level with him was one of the coolest things for me.
I've talked to a lot of people who've asked me questions, who was the greatest, Gordie Howe or Wayne Gretzky, and I said, well, you take 5 Wayne Gretzkys and put them on the ice, and I'll take 5 Gordie Howes, and 5 Wayne Gretzkys will be laying around the ice while Gordie is scoring goals. He was that kind of a player.
I got the pleasure to meet Gordie a couple times, but just you know, such a nice, sweet man. But you just hear of all the stories of, you know, how fierce and competitor he was. But just every time I met him, he was just, you know, so humble, so gracious, and just a kind man.
When you think of hockey, that's what you think of. I think you think of Gordie Howe and the way he played, the way he conducted himself. You know, he's a role model for a lot of people, including myself. So, had the opportunity to meet him, and feel pretty fortunate to have done that.
Mickey, that's the future of hockey right there, talking about this man. He shaped the game to what it is today. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I'd say Gretzky and Lemieux kind of carried it on. Bobby Orr, all those guys, that era. He did set the example for a lot of it. Now Crosby and his gang in modern day hockey. So yeah, they all know, the Europeans included, they know who Mr. Hockey is. They know who Gordie Howe was. They knew the Red Wings. They knew it all. They put it all together.
All right, here's my question for you. Did you know that Al Kaline and Gordie Howe were friends?
Not till Friday night.
Well, they were, and Bernie caught up with Al Kaline this week to talk about it.
There wasn't a tougher guy in all of sports than Gordie, and he had a great memory.
You could high stick him, and it might take him 2 games, it might take him 2 months, it might take him 2 years, but he was going to get you. He was going to get back at you. There's no question about it. I remember Stan Mikita telling me the story. I was playing golf with Stan Mikita one time, and he accidentally high stick Gordie, and he says for 3 he worried 3 times that they were playing the Red Wings. He knew Gordie was going to get him, and one day he got him. He just laid him flat.
Golfing. He was worried about the next season.
Mikita could play golf like Al can play golf. And Stan Mikita, at one time, he went from being the most penalized player in the league to being the Lady Bing, the most gentlemanly player, because his daughter said to him, "Why, Daddy, are you sitting alone in the penalty box all the time?" And I just see the back of your head. She was 5 years old. He changed his whole game. That did it for him. But Mikita was a great guy, and he respected Gordie, and he knew he knew it was coming.
All right, so Mickey, you were traded here to the Red Wings in January 1971. You played a half year with Gordie Howe. What was he like in the dressing room?
He was very quiet. We played our games at home usually on Thursday or Sunday night, a lot of Sunday nights home at Olympia. Alex, Gordie, Bergie, Nick Libet and the gang, they'd have the golf on. They were all big golf nuts, and they'd have the golf on TV till about 5:30. The game started at 7 o'clock, and it was very quiet. But Gordie was, he was the kind of a guy that really led by example. He wasn't a band leader. He wasn't a rah-rah guy. He just went out and did what he did and expected that, hey, I'm going to show you how it's done. Let's see if, not many could do it like him, that's for sure, not any really, but he did set great examples for all of us in a very, very quiet way.
So you're here a half year. It was the year that then he would retire. So you're the new guy. Did you ever get FaceTime with him or anything like that? I think that might be why you have a hockey stick in your hand.
Yeah, you know what? I had the great fortune one day at Olympia. We were out there by ourselves, and Gordie said to me, "Come over here, young man, I want to show you something." And we had only a goalie on the ice. And as we both were, as you know, right-handed shooters, we're like this looking at the goalie. And he said, "What do you see over the catching glove over here?" And I said, "Well, not very much, maybe 3-4 inches." He said, "Okay, hold on to the stick. Come over and get behind the blade and the puck. Now what do you see over the catching glove here?" There was about 16 inches there. And he said to me, "You put that puck there, you shoot it there, they're not going to stop it. You're going to score lots of goals." And there was the greatest goal scorer in the game, sharing something with me. He didn't know at the time he was going to retire, and unfortunately we only got that half year together. But to this day, I try to pass that on. I do pass it on to young players, and they go, "Wow, really? I never thought about it that way." But I didn't either. I was 23 years old, and here I'm getting advice to try to beat goaltenders. That philosophy from the greatest goal scorer this game ever saw.
That's amazing. So kids, if you're listening, do what Gordie Howe did, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, Mickey, for that story. I love it. Next up, they say behind every great man is a great woman, right, Mickey? Gordie had Colleen. We'll take a look back at their relationship. That number 9 on top of the Rensen this week. Now, to tell the story of Gordie Howe, you have to know about his wife, Colleen. Right, Mick?
You betcha.
Back in 2003, Devin Skillian sat down with Gordie to talk about the impact Colleen had.
Even if you know all about hard-nosed, rugged hockey, to really know about Gordie Howe, you have to know about Colleen. Colleen was the pretty young woman the shy hockey star was too nervous to even talk to. But the fiercest thing on skates was finally able to work up the courage to ask her out, and they've been together ever since. From the very beginning, Colleen showed a knack for putting Gordie's life in order.
From when I turned the key and went in the house, she was boss from that point on.
Especially when it came to money. It was a lunch with one of his teammates that really did it. Gordie came to learn that the best player in the league was making peanuts.
He said, "You're stupid." And I said, "Oh, I'll go along with that, but what's your reasoning?" And he said, "I am making twice as much money." And I said, "Oh, is that so? How much am I making?" And he told me, which really almost knocked me off his seat.
Gordie Howe is the greatest of them all. The greatest of them all, yes, the greatest of them all.
Colleen pushed Gordie to demand his worth. Keep in mind, this was long before the mega salaries of today. He did, and they became one of the most formidable pairs in hockey. Gordie roaming the domain on the ice, Colleen taking on the world off it as the first woman agent in major sports history. All these years later, they are Mr. and Mrs. Hockey.
She was a big part of that, not just for Gordie Howe, but getting contracts sort of upped in this league, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was. Unfortunately, she had to do it, and it was very unfortunate that at the time the Norris regime didn't recognize Gordie and take care of him. And that's what really caused the rift. That's why he retired, unfortunately. And I got only a half a year with him, and he moved on. Fortunately, when the Ilitches got involved, bingo, let's get Gordie back here, let's get this thing repaired, and they did, thank God. But yeah, he was taken advantage of.
Right.
A lot of guys were in those days, but the greatest hockey player in the world, and they were making a lot of money off him. And he finally got it figured out. And Colleen was the one that got the two-hander out and said, "All right, that's enough of that.
Sometimes it takes a woman, right?"
So she took care of the BC two-hander, and Gordie scored the goals.
All right, we're not done yet talking about Gordie Howe. Next up, he branches out, showing off his personality. Stick with us. People leaving, you know, flowers and hockey pucks and sticks and things to remember Gordie Howe over at the Joe. That's what that video was. Now, as Bernie said at the beginning of this show, it's time for celebration. Now, everyone who knew him, Mick included, knew that Gordie had a great personality, and he showed that off in a commercial for SportsCenter. Watch.
In the old days, we had respect for some. Yeah, Bobby Hall hit me one time right here. Hey, you're not listening. They had the advantage because they can put you in a corner here like this. You're in there digging in real tight, you do this, and you get their attention. If you don't like him again, it's up here. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? The follow-through's like this. When the puck dropped, I hit him here. It was a respectful game when we played it.
Isn't that funny? He was a funny guy.
Hilarious. I mean, that's all true stuff. It was so easy for Gordie to do. He could do that commercial in his sleep.
Right.
Because he did it on the ice all the time. I'm telling you.
I love stories like that. It seemed that he was a really funny guy, a really great guy. This is the end of our show, Mickey. Do you have a final thought?
Yeah, I got a lot of them, but I think the most important one is that I've said it before, everybody knows the statistics that Gordie put up on the board, and all those all-star years and all those scoring titles and the way he played the game forever. But I think the most important thing is he never forgot Floral, Saskatchewan, where he came from. I hear it a lot about hockey players, but Gordie led the way with that. Never forgot where he came from. Never understood that money was the important thing. It was just, I want to play. I love the game. A lot of us feel the same way about that, and we do never forget our roots. And I think that's why people look at us and go, you know what? You guys seem like pretty good guys, and we like that. And Gordie was the guy that set the pace for that all those years ago.
So tough on the ice, but a true gentleman off the ice.
Absolutely.
Mickey, thanks for joining us and telling stories.
Good to be here. Good to see Gordie one last time Tuesday and Wednesday. And we got a lot of great memories. That's what life's all about, making memories. Hopefully they're good ones. And we're fortunate to have a lot of good ones, as we saw Gordie at the Joe the last several months, even though he wasn't in the greatest shape. We got a lot of great memories to put a smile on our faces, and that's what he would want.
Visitation at the Joe from 9 to 9 on Tuesday. I'm hearing the family's going to be there, so you can pay your respects. Of course, his funeral on Wednesday. Let's just remember Gordie Howe, number 9.
It's a celebration of a great life and a great man, a great family.
Couldn't have said it any better. Thanks for joining us tonight.